Hello everybody, I'm Jack, also on number 27 on YouTube, and I have dealt with VIEZU before because I brought my Jaguar XJR Reggie here for a little bit of help with its health. I was really impressed with the guys, and today we are here to try and find out about some of the most commonly asked questions to do with remapping. And I'm here with Simon and Paul. So guys, if you can just briefly introduce yourselves and let us know what you do, then I can go ahead and ask you a few questions.
Hi, I'm Paul, CEO of VIEZU Technologies here. I've been in the motor industry for, I think it's now 37 years, in fact. Originally working for vehicle manufacturers, both Mercedes-Benz and Nissan. Got into tuning about 22 odd years ago, and really we've set up VIEZU from what was initially just 4 people in a room to a team now of 27 in all, and it's growing all the time.
Okay, and Simon?
Simon, Managing Director and Technical Director at VIEZU. I've been in the industry now for over 20 years, not quite as many as Paul. Started off very much in the aftermarket, so it was audio, electronics, and the sort of the early days of ECU and chip tuning, way back in the day. A lot of work with motorsport, so the first Ferrari 458 Italia race car tuned in the world, we developed that solution. First Aston Martin tuning solutions, developed way back in the day, through to our Predator upgrades that we do now for the F-Type, the Predator 2 that's now out.
Thank you very much, guys. So I think the first thing we all want to know is just a very basic, simple outline of what is a remap and what is involved in doing it.
Okay, so without getting too complicated into the details of the engine calibration that we change, an engine remap is where we take the standard information, the program that runs the engine, and we optimize the data. So it's been detuned when you first get the car for geographical reasons, climatic reasons, and various different other marketing reasons. We effectively restore, we dial that power and performance and torque and fuel economy as well back up to the optimum for the engine.
Okay, so I mean, my next question was going to be what are the benefits, but I think you've partly answered that. Yeah. And that is that some engines are naturally detuned by manufacturers because they have to be sold all over the world, all sorts of reasons like that. So the benefit will be it's going to run a lot better, but is there anything else to mention on that side of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's optimizing the overall, we say performance, but the overall running and output of the engine. So whether it is economy, whether it's you're towing a vehicle and you want the torque load down, that real sort of super fuel efficient software, it can be designed and tailored and created the software to deliver that for you. Or if you're out and out full-blown racetrack, we can go the other end of the spectrum and give you the sort of full performance on there. So it's not too dissimilar from what you'll see in many showrooms where one engine is in 3 or 4 different power levels. We're uprating that power level and output to its ideal and its optimum. And as we mentioned, geographical reasons, so in certain countries, certain climates, if you're 50,000 feet above sea level, there's not as much air, so the engine calibration is designed for those conditions. Of course, we're running in quite a nice climate here in the UK and Europe, or wherever else it is in the world, we can optimize the software for those running conditions. So there's always more headroom in the engine, in the software, even with reliability and longevity in the components, to get the best out of it and really tailor it to what the customer's looking for.
Fantastic. So I was going to ask about longevity next, but you've already mentioned it. And I think the most persuasive element of that is the example you made, that there are cars from manufacturers where essentially you're buying a model which is more powerful and more higher up, but the engine is actually the same. They've sort of just artificially detuned it in order to have a model range almost. So that's something that you can deal with. Very
much so. I mean, when we were young guys, I mean, we might be driving something like my aspirational car was probably something like a Mark II Escort. And that, of course, came with a 1-litre engine, a 1.1, a 1.3. Maybe if you had a little bit more money, you could buy the Mexico or even the RS2000. So same body shell, but actually different engines. The engines themselves were fundamentally different, with different carburetors and exhaust systems, etc. Almost all of that has gone now. One engine is manufactured because it's much cheaper. You can put that in a range of cars and you control the power levels by the software. So if we take that to something like the Jaguars, you might start in the F-Type with something like a P450 on the V8, 450 brake horsepower. The normal version might have 510 or 550, and then you get into the special editions like the SVRs at 575. All of that is software. Same injectors, same engine, same head, same exhaust systems as well. It's just the software that controls it. And that means we can have a bit of fun there, because depending on which model you've bought, we know the engine is more than capable of handling the power, and just by changing software, we can unleash huge amounts of very reliable, safe power.
That's fantastic. But I think a really big question, which I've heard before as well, is it legal? Because you're going in, you're modifying a car, and now they're so complex. So what's the situation on that side?
It's a really good question, and it does come up a lot. And to some extent, it does actually depend a little bit on where you are. Some countries have really clamped down on tuning. Most of Europe has not. But you should not and must not be changing emission systems. So deleting DPF systems, removing catalytic converters is clearly illegal. Changing the software itself is not illegal, particularly if you are staying in line with the manufacturer's own maps, as we've already discussed. So if you're taking a car to a higher brake horsepower, as long as you are using sensible changes to do that, and it still passes an emission test, it's not actually legal to do.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for that. And next thing is, though, how do I know if my own car is good for a remap? Because I think some respond better than others.
Yeah, I mean, Simon, do you want to cover that one? I'm thinking particularly turbocharged and supercharged engines are most responsive.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, anything that's got forced induction responds really well. We've got more air in the engine, we've got more scope and more room to adjust the calibration. Naturally aspirated engines respond really well for tuning on their own scale. So if you've got a turbocharged 2-litre engine, you could be looking at 40, 50 or even more horsepower if it's a detuned version from the factory or the lower spec models. If you've got a 2-litre naturally aspirated, you're never going to see the same kind of gains that a turbocharged engine will, but comparably to other naturally aspirated, you're still going to see sharper throttle response, better mid-range, a much smoother feel really from the power curve on the vehicle. So it's all relative to the engine that you've got in the vehicle, on the powertrain. As Paul said, some respond better than others. So naturally aspirated, nice sharp improvement. Turbocharged is the other end of the scale that gives sort of the biggest improvements on there. And of course, supercharged engines coming in sort of close second to those turbos. In regards to your own vehicle, knowing if it's a good candidate, shall we say, for tuning, it's all about making sure you've got a good, healthy vehicle. Has it been well maintained? Has it been serviced regularly? Do you let it warm up before you take it on a spirited drive? Do you let it cool down before you turn it off? So if it's something you've only just purchased, best thing to do is get it into ourselves or one of our dealers, get the vehicle checked over, get a health check carried out on it, diagnostics, checking all your basics, your fluids, your oils, etc., and just seeing, is it a good, healthy candidate for tuning? If there's wires and cables hanging off everywhere and the door's held on with a bit of sticky tape, probably not the best thing to do tuning it first. Get it shipshape and worthy to be on the road, then look at tuning the vehicle.
Okay, that makes sense. So I guess that's the same with regards to a high mileage vehicle. You need to assess it and have a look at it and see if it is a good candidate or not.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in there. With high mileage vehicles, we do tune a lot of these, and for different markets, we see different vehicles being put forward to us. So some international markets, some of the vehicles are very high mileage at being put forward for tuning. But the beautiful thing about what we do with the tuning that we provide is we write our own software. So we tailor the modifications to the condition of the vehicle. So a vehicle that's got 30,000 miles on it, it's nice, it's healthy, it's strong, all the components there haven't been used much. There's plenty of room safely within the engine and the components to extract that extra horsepower. If you've got a vehicle with 300,000 miles on it, looking for a performance tune, for example, we take that into account. So again, service history, how has it been looked after and maintained? Is it still on the original turbo? Well, it's not going to be tuned as harshly and as aggressively as a car with 30,000 miles on it. And these are conversations that we have with our customers and that our dealers have with our customers as well to educate the whole sort of market, if you like, on the condition of the vehicle and what's ideal for that vehicle in the condition it's presented.
What about if I have some warning lights on my dash or some fault codes? Does that mean that I have to get them sorted before I come and see you?
It's not quite as straightforward as just, yes, all faults need to be fixed before coming to us. It's all to do with the health and condition of the vehicle. Now, in reality, some vehicles will be presented to us, some older vehicles, higher mileage. We touched upon Land Rover Defenders, some of the options we offer for those. Can have every light on the dash when they come in. Not all fault codes and lights on a car are serious. Not all will actually prevent tuning. It all depends on what's actually detected on the vehicle. So if you've got something like a crankshaft position sensor fault, that's quite a serious one. That definitely needs resolving before the car's tuned. If you've got a boost leak, well, that again needs fixing. You might have a hole in a pipe somewhere that's throwing a code on as a result. The car needs to be in a healthy condition before we tune it. If you've got a glow plug light that's come on, the issue may now have been resolved, but the fault's still recorded in the ECU. that can just be cleared, health check carried out on the car, and we can continue to tune it. So it all really depends on what the code is and how the car's being presented.
And just two things to follow up on that. The first is, can people just call you and get guidance on what they need to do in that situation? And secondly, if it is a genuine problem with the car, I know when I had my own XJR in, you did quite a lot of mechanical work to it. So could you anyhow resolve any issues that come up as long as you know what they are?
The really short answer is yes to both. Okay. The slightly longer one is yes, welcome to take a phone call, describe the symptoms over the phone. The best thing is to get the car actually booked in with us so we can carry out a health check, carry out a diagnostic on the vehicle and actually find out what's going on. An engine light that's come on or a warning light on the dashboard is not always the end of the world. It could be something quite simple. Recently I had one with a loose connection on the air mass meter. So throwing intermittent faults for the engine, the light coming on, just a loose connection. So it's always best to speak to us, describe what the symptoms are, but get the car booked in with us, let us do a health check, let us find out what the root cause of the issue is and address it from there. And of course, while it's here, pre-remap, let's check the service condition of the car, when was it last serviced, is it been well maintained, and if required, we can carry out a service there. So you've got a high mileage petrol car, let's make sure the spark plugs are in good condition before we tune the car, of course.
And I think that's a really good point Simon's picked up on there. A lot of tuners, you know, they want the job, the car's been presented, let's just crack on and tune it. That isn't actually how we approach it, and it's not how it should be approached. If you booked your car in for tuning and the first thing the guy comes out with the tuning tool and plugs in and starts uploading a map, in my opinion, something's going wrong here. Slow it all down. Every vehicle should have a health check. We definitely want to be looking at things like fault code reading. So we'll do some diagnostics on every car that's presented for tuning. We want to check oil. We want to check water. We want to make sure the car is literally looking right, smelling right, sounding right. You know, are the timing chains rattling? Is the turbocharger whistling? Have we got oil leaks from the engine? Have we got plumes of exhaust smoke and things that just don't look quite right? And as Simon touched on a moment ago, sometimes you open the bonnet and where there should be a sensor, there's now a big roll of duct tape with a bung or something like that, and you think, well, where's that gone? We like to really understand the vehicle because ultimately we want to tune it for the best result, and if the vehicle isn't starting in the best condition, the chances are it's not going to end in the best condition. So a good round of diagnostics and health check and a good look at a vehicle before we tune it is absolutely essential.
That's great. And you guys also have a dyno here. I know my car was on it. And that's pretty much as high stress conditions as a car will get in. So I suppose you always have a look underneath as well. I saw with mine, make sure that all the running gear is healthy and so on.
Well, that's the advantage of having the workshop. So I can interrupt there. That's the advantage of the workshop with the ramps we have and the dyno there. We can check the car over visually instead of just looking at the top and going, it's okay, up in the air, oh, there's worn bushes, or it's got a leak here, or that's not quite connected properly. On some of these cars, we put in 150 to 200 horsepower increase with just a remap alone on a P450 Jaguar, for example. We want to make sure that car is in a good, healthy condition for safety and for mechanic purposes on there. So as we're tuning it, we're putting our name behind it, we're putting our guarantees behind it that we've mentioned previously. Our tuning's insured. We want to make sure that car's in good condition first. And to touch upon the dyno that you mentioned, it's a really crucial part of equipment or tool that we have down in the workshop. It allows us to safely test that vehicle up to and above and beyond motorway speeds to make sure that the loading on the vehicle is acceptable. The car can deal with the power and the performance and it is running safely in those conditions.
Something I think I'd add to that too is probably about 2 out of every 10 cars that are presented for tuning we don't tune because the car is not ready and it's not in a fit enough condition. And the dyno forms part of that. It's amazing how many customers own a vehicle for some time. Oh, it feels a bit lackluster now. It doesn't feel like it used to. I think I'll get it tuned. Well, actually, it's not the tuning you need. You've got a problem with your vehicle. And we'll put it on the dyno and your dashboard might not be lit up like a Christmas tree. So you think it's okay. And a vehicle that's meant to be running 500 brake horsepower puts out 320. We don't want to be tuning that at this time until we understand where has that power gone. Have we lost compression in a cylinder or all sorts of other things? So, you know, again, these people are just having someone to come out, do a flash tune on their driveway and disappear without any diagnostics. It's not the way to go. As your car gets older, the chances are it might have lost some power, but why are you looking to have it tuned? Has it actually lost a load of power, and are we now masking a mechanical fault that really we need to identify and have a conversation about before we start trying to crack on and give you more power?
We'll add a little bit more on top of that as well. You mentioned obviously visiting cars, so mobile tuners coming out to the vehicle. There is obviously, with everything in life, in every industry, there's different levels to the service that's offered out there. With one of the VIEZU approved mobile dealers, for example, they will have diagnostic capabilities. They will be able to data log the vehicle. So as we've mentioned, you might not have a fault code on there, but a simple drive down the road 30 miles an hour and we can see there's no boost being recorded. So we now know there's an underlying fault with the vehicle. So it's all those added services and options that our dealers can provide that gives the end user that peace of mind that whilst they can drive their car to the shops and it feels fine, is it actually performing how it should be before we unlock the potential of the car?
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, and what about insurance? Because obviously you're changing the parameters of how the car performed. So first of all, do you have to inform them? And secondly, how will they react to it?
The answer would always be yes. Particularly, in the UK, in Europe, you must tell your insurance company, and it's always our strong recommendation you do. A lot of insurance companies approach this in different ways. Some will have literally their own internal rules. 10% power increase is completely acceptable, and they don't make any penalty for that at all. Others will be a little bit tougher, but then you also have specialist insurance companies like Adrian Flux that are ready and completely geared up for modifications. I actually find, particularly once you get to a certain age, and you've got quite a few no claims behind you, insurance companies become an awful lot more relaxed. I can remember a very real case we had quite recently. A gentleman with his Range Rover SVR was taking it up to, I think it was 670 brake horsepower. He phoned his insurance company live from our showroom as the work was being done, as we advised him you probably should do, and I think they charged him an extra £25 for administration to amend his policy. So it isn't always as scary as you might think it will be, but the answer is yes. Always tell your insurance company of any modifications, in fact.
Fantastic. And if I have my car remapped and then I need to go and take it back for servicing and so on by a main dealer if it's a new car or a specialist later, is there a chance that they're just going to rewrite it all and get it back to standard because of the way they operate or the way they do servicing, or what happens there?
A lot of dealers will do this, and they don't even do it on purpose. In most cases, they don't even know that your vehicle's tuned, but they are under the instruction every time a vehicle is presented, do a factory update if there is one, and run the update. And if there is a full update of an ECU, it will overwrite the tuning. And this is important. It's one of the reasons you might want to use a company like ourselves, because we offer a lifetime guarantee on the software. If you ever lose your map for any reason, your ECU fails or your ECU is updated by a manufacturer's update, we will retune your vehicle completely free of charge. And that's for lifetime that you own the vehicle promise. So the answer is yes, it can be overwritten. If you choose your tuning company wisely, it will have no penalty though, and you can always get your software back.
That's reassuring. And what about if I have a fairly new car and it's still under warranty and I take it to you guys? How will the manufacturer look at that? Will it affect the warranty? Will they be unhappy about it?
Another absolute classic question, and it is one we get quite a lot. Not necessarily the most easy of straightforward answers. Officially, due to block exemption legislation within Europe and the UK, you are allowed to make changes to your vehicle away from a manufacturer's specification, but the manufacturer always has the right to reject a warranty claim if they believe they can prove whatever work you've done to your vehicle has caused the failure. So this is why we have tuning file insurance. If a manufacturer can prove that a map has caused a failure, and let's be honest, we've now tuned well over 300,000 vehicles. We've never had a failure that's caused a warranty claim to be rejected. But if it ever did, we have tuning file insurance that backs our software, so you're covered either way. But we will fully support and work with a manufacturer if they believe the tuning has caused a failure. If I'm honest, to prove that it hasn't, because I don't believe it will, because of all the things we've already said, the changes we make are generally totally in line with the manufacturer's software, and we're not taking vehicles way beyond what is seen as safe and reliable.
Okay, and let me just quickly unpack that. If you do, for example, you're just working on the engine, I know a lot of people might think that if you're going to be doing the remap, then you go in with a broken aircon just because you've modified another part of the car. They might then reject the warranty. That's definitely not the case, right?
It's definitely not the case in Europe. I think our friends in America, they can be a little bit keen to try and say your whole vehicle warranty is void. You're actually not allowed to do that. I mean, ultimately, by doing that, you're trying to say the customer now has no statutory rights. If your electric window stops working because your car has been tuned, there's absolutely no way that warranty claim can be rejected. Not in Europe, anyway. Although many dealers might suggest your warranty is now void, the truth is, it's just not the case.
Okay, now I think we might have partly answered this before, but a lot of people ask in this situation, look, if it's so easy and so quick, why don't manufacturers just do this themselves? I think we touched on it, but if we maybe want to...
We've kind of touched on that already, I think, with a couple of the vehicles we've mentioned, but it's across the whole spectrum of manufacturers. They do this. They offer you the sport model or the R model or the special edition. I mean, we look at things like SVRs.
Indeed.
They are an up-rated version of the standard engine. So an F-Type, standard F-Type R was 550 horsepower, the SVR 575. It's all the same engine.
It is a
they just
Remap
hold a few options back. So as the model gets a year or two old, they then start to launch some of the special editions before you get to the run-out models, where magically a few extra horsepower has been found to offer on that model.
A remap by any other name by the manufacturer.
Yes.
So yes, manufacturers do this. The difference is you generally have to make your decision when you're in the showroom, because once you've purchased that brake horsepower, it's that brake horsepower for life. But with tuning in the aftermarket, you can have a little bit more fun and you can take a vehicle that started lower and take it much higher.
Okay, now if you're improving a vehicle's performance, then does that mean that fuel economy will suffer?
It's actually quite an interesting question to put forward. We actually see on a lot of vehicles, performance tuning actually benefits the vehicle and gives better economy as well. Ultimately, the one thing that controls the fuel economy is the driver's right foot, how aggressively they drive that vehicle. In many cases, by putting the extra torque, even with economy tuning, putting that extra torque load down in the efficient area of the RPM band, whilst you're giving more torque load down, you're now not having to rev the car as hard, you're not having to push it as hard, and you get better fuel economy. You can drive the higher gear at lower RPM much easier. And we see that with a lot of our fleet and commercial vehicles. Given the ideal drivability low down in that efficient sort of green area of the RPM, or the little tacho you see on the dash, actually encourages the driver to short shift and drive in that eco area. From a performance tune point of view, on a like-for-like basis, let's look at a gasoline engine, it should have no negative impact on the fuel economy. Now, the first few miles after driving out of the workshop after the car's been tuned, don't look at the instant fuel consumption because, of course, the right foot's going to be used a little bit more spiritedly while the customer enjoys the new tune. But once the driving settles down to how they drive normally, and typically they'll take full advantage of the changes we've made and should see no negative impact on the fuel economy. And with diesels, they often see a nice improvement, even with the performance tune.
Excellent, well that's nice to have. And can you enlighten us a little bit on what is meant by stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 tuning, or what are the differences?
That's definitely yours.
Yeah, that's my area. So it's one of those industry sort of terminologies that's crept up over the last few years, and it helps customers kind of understand what's being done to the vehicle. So generally, and there's a lot of people who have different interpretations of it, but from an industry point of view, stage 1 is a tune on the vehicle. You're remapping the engine. Stage 2 is where you then start to get into a few bolt-on upgrades as well. So it's let's say a performance remap, and you've got a high flow exhaust and an induction kit fitted to the vehicle. We might be starting to look at some cooling modifications at this point, maybe a slightly operated intercooler or charge cooler, for example, but it's effectively bolt-ons for the engine, external parts you've added. Stage 3, it's kind of where I sort of stop, because stage 3, 4, 5 and beyond are all kind of the same thing, where you're now putting bigger components onto the engine. So on a turbo engine, this would be a bigger turbo, bigger injectors. Depending on the engine and the platform you're working on, it could be cams, it could be operated internals, forged pistons, rods, etc. So stage 3, sort of stage 3 and beyond, is all that sort of area of big sort of mechanical upgrades. It takes the car away from sort of where it is from a standard sort of platform, and you're really starting to operate now. So from a Jaguar point of view, that's where we're getting into things like our crank pulley upgrades on the 5 litres. We're really taking it above and beyond those sort of base models and really sort of exploring the full potential.
So crank pulley, would that be a stage 2?
Crank pulley is where we're getting into our stage 3 now.
Stage 3, okay,
Yeah.
fine. Okay.
It's those bigger performance modifications, if that makes sense. It's the areas you can't get to just with software.
Okay.
It needs hardware to get you to that higher performance level.
Excellent. Now, today we're here at your headquarters, and I know that you do the work here because I brought my car here myself. But does that mean that if people want a remap or whatever, they have to come here, or do they have any other options?
Well, the wonderful world we live in now, with all the technology we've got, the internet and all the modern hardware we provide, we can literally put our package in a box, ship it anywhere in the world, and depending on which modifications you're fitting, you're happy to do them yourself or get a local garage or performance centre to fit them, we can provide our tuning and upgrades to pretty much every car anywhere in the world.
Fantastic. And tell me a little bit about tuning boxes, because essentially I know what a remap is, but I also know there's a tuning box, and I know that they're slightly different things. So,
Couple of options when we talk about tuning boxes. So we have units like, this is like what we call a home tuning device. So this actually is almost the same sort of tool as we use professionally down in the workshop. The customer can plug that in anywhere in the world, download his software, and we can offer him a live full custom map by basically plugging this back in and uploading his own software. So not strictly a tuning box, more of a home tuning device. Now there are always some vehicles that you cannot connect to through either the OBD port, and there are some vehicles you can't connect to from the OBD port or directly to the ECU either. So in other words, they're untunable. And for those vehicles, we will often recommend a tuning box. And there's quite a big range of tuning boxes. There's diesel tuning boxes for fuel economy, and then there's much more complicated units like the JB4 boxes, which plug into about 10 different sensors under the bonnet and really offer almost the same results as a full map, and the software that goes on them is very complicated. And then, as I say, they're quite simple plug and play tuning boxes for diesel vehicles that make a nice improvement, but not necessarily huge. So there's really a lot of different solutions for a lot of different vehicles, and it does depend sometimes on budget and what you're looking for. I would always say wherever you can, offer a full custom remap, because basically we can always change so much more when we've got full access to the ECU. But where that's not available, there are some great tuning products, and we try to have the full range, so no matter what you're driving, no matter where you are, we've got something that we can offer you to give you more power or more fuel economy, depending on what you're looking for.
so a remap is usually the best option. But a tuning box has some other sort of benefits. For example, you can do it remotely, you can send it off to someone and so on, and that's why you generally use it rather than a remap. But if you
Correct.
can, always try and go for a full remap.
As Paul's mentioned already, the ideal is the remap. It gives us full access to everything for that engine, so we can control all the various parameters, limiters, fueling, air, boost pressure, superchargers, everything. As Paul's mentioned, depending on the platform, the vehicle, if the ECU is supported for tuning, if there is a home tuning system such as this available for it. So it might be the ECU is tunable, but the ECU needs to be taken out and opened and connections made to it. That's not for everyone to want to do on their drive, pull it out of their vehicle and ship it across the world. That's why we have obviously the Genius for OBD connections, but the tuning boxes fill that gap in the market for us. Things like the JB4 for the petrols and some of the diesel tuning boxes that we offer. It fills that void in the market where that customer can't actually go somewhere and get their car tuned. It might not be tunable. Plugging in there still gives the benefits of better fuel economy on the diesels, better torque, better throttle response. It's close to a remap. It's never going to be as good as a remap, but it is a really, really nice upgrade that offers a lot of benefits for the customer if that vehicle's not supported or they can't ship the ECU to us for tuning.
And the other option is we also have, of course, a huge network of trained, approved VIEZU dealers. So in the UK, there's 120 approved installers. So if you can't get to us here in Stratford-upon-Avon at the head office, we've got lots and lots of dealers out there, very talented guys, very well trained, offering, in many cases, mobile solutions. So if you can't get to us, they can probably get to you. Operations these days in over 82 different countries, 1,000 approved trained dealers around the world. So one way or another, we can get to you and we can get your vehicle tuned.
So hold on a second here, Simon. So I'm slightly confused now because I think we've talked about a remap, we've talked about these boxes, but I also heard you mention chip tuning. So what's the difference between the three?
In many ways, removing the tuning box, because that is a slightly different proposition, but remapping, chip tuning and these terminologies are actually really the same thing. And what we're talking about is changing the program that controls the engine. Now, how that's physically done is the difference that we're now talking about. So initially, when this type of technology came along, back 20, 25 years ago, people talked about chip tuning, and that's because the chip was physically taken off the ECU board. So the chip was removed, it was put into a chip programmer, the software was taken off, and the software was changed and loaded on a specific chip that was then put back onto the ECU board. From about the year 2000, 2001, nearly all vehicle ECUs actually moved to a microprocessor-based ECU. So what a chip used to have was like 28 legs, some had a little bit more, some had a little bit less. The microprocessors literally have hundreds of legs, and they're so small, human beings can't actually solder them. You can't remove them or put them back on if you want to. They're fitted on in a factory by a robot, and they're sealed for life. So the way that we tune these vehicles now, ideally, is directly through the OBD port of the vehicle. So you connect to the diagnostic port, you suck off the software from the ECU, you're not actually removing the software is still on the ECU, you're taking a copy. You adjust that copy with all the changes that we want to make the vehicle go faster or improved in fuel economy, etc. We make those changes, we load it back onto a tuning tool, just like this one. So the software goes back onto this plugs back into the ECU of the vehicle, and we load the new software onto the vehicle. Once we actually get the software, and it doesn't matter if we've taken it directly off a chip or we've taken it off of the OBD port, the changes we make, the tuning, the remapping is actually the same process. Really the difference between chip tuning and remapping is the way of how you get the software off. So chip tuning is a bit defunct now. We actually still do it here. We're one of the few places in the UK that still will offer traditional chip tuning for older vehicles. But from the year 2000, most vehicles are ECU remapped or remapping. There's one slight addition to that. Some vehicles cannot be connected to through the OBD port, and for those vehicles we still do connect directly to the ECU, but we're no longer taking the chip off, we're actually soldering onto pins or connectors on the ECU, or ideally in some cases you can connect just to the pins on the outside of the ECU. It's nice, quick, very easy, very clean. So there's a couple of different communication methods depending on what car you've got and the age of the car, but predominantly chip tuning, remapping, same sort of thing in many ways.
Great. And earlier on, I think you mentioned a guarantee when we were talking about other things. So can you give me a little bit more information on that? What does it involve? What does it cover?
We have a number of guarantees actually, depending on which software you're looking at. But first of all, everything we do comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you're not sure tuning is for you, if you're not sure it's right for your vehicle, if you don't know if you want a performance tune or an economy tune, we can tune your vehicle, you can enjoy it, drive it, test it to your heart's content for 30 days. If you are not absolutely delighted in that 30 days, we can either change the level of tune. So if you've gone for an economy tune, you think, actually, I wish I'd gone for a bit more power, we just change the map for you. If for any reason you say, actually, this isn't for me, full refund is available. We do need to put your car back to standard, so we put the original software back on there, we reset your car to standard, and you get a full money back guarantee. Our tuning files are also insured. Now, we're very good at this. We've been doing this for many years, 18 years plus now. And mistakes, just, if I'm honest, don't happen. But if you're worried, do not be, because we have full indemnified insurance on our software. If we make a mistake in a tuning file and we damage your car, both we, the installer, and you are covered by our insurance. Now, I can absolutely assure you that's not going to happen, but it's a cast iron guarantee and it's an independent insurance policy that is in place. So there's just two of the things that we have. And then, of course, we also have our software guarantee. As we mentioned earlier, if you lose our software for any reason of no fault of your own, we will retune your vehicle free of charge. So there's three different types of guarantee, if you like, in place, depending on what your circumstances are.
A standard remap then, it's pretty unintrusive really, but what about if I've got really lofty goals for what I want to do with my car? I want it to be the fastest one of the breed. How far can you go?
Pretty far. There's a simple answer on there. First of all, we'll talk to you. We'll have a consultation about your vehicle. What is it you're looking to achieve? What are your goals? If we take the Jaguar F-Type as an example, we've taken that vehicle from 550 horsepower, but the P450, the lowest horsepower version they offer in that model, all the way up to over 700 horsepower now with our Predator 2. So that's starting with your remap, and then gearbox tuning. We've now got cold air induction kits on there, supercharger pulley upgrades. Our Predator 2 actually has an uprated supercharger. So this is beyond stage 3 now. This is stage 4 and beyond. We've got charge coolers on there to improve the cooling, to reduce that sort of heat soak that builds into the components. The suspension and handling upgrades we can put onto the vehicle. Improved braking, so disc calipers, even larger brake kits are available. With the Predator 2, we've even gone as far as now with our chiller kit. So we've got our own supercharger chiller kit, utilising the aircon system to help super cool the coolant in the supercharger and reduce again that heat soak. And it's always that thing we're fighting against with any sort of tuning on these high performance cars, it's heat getting into the components. So the short answer is yes, we can go as far as you want, but we need to sit down, have a consultation and understand what are the goals, what are you trying to achieve? Is it maximum horsepower in the fastest car in the world, or is it maximum horsepower that you can still use and go to the shops and take out on a daily?
ultimately, sooner or later, you need to have a conversation around reliability. You
Yeah.
know, once you start building 1,000 brake horsepower cars, they're not so ideal for going to Tesco's to do your shopping, for example, or the school run. And ultimately, you need to decide, do I want to win the next race? Do I want to win the fastest quarter mile, or do I want a car that's going to do 150,000 miles? And, you know, budget and reliability, sooner or later, when you keep pushing and pushing, has to be a conversation that needs to be had.
So how would a remap work? I'd arrive at your headquarters here, or I'd go to one of your approved dealers, and then what would happen at that stage?
So if you arrive at our headquarters, meted and greeted by our retail team, they'll talk through the options for the day, what we've got booked in for you. We'll then get a check of the car done, visually inspect the car, hand it over to our workshop. We'll then carry out the health inspection and the diagnostics, and depending on the work we're doing, maybe going on the ramp, maybe going on the dyno that day. Once all that's completed, we obviously get a read of the ECU, or it could be the gearbox if we're tuning the gearbox that day. So we'll read the relevant controller. That comes up to our technical team upstairs, who will then, with the requests that have been made for that particular job, so performance tune and improved gear shifting from the gearbox, will then go to work on the engine calibration. They'll start to make the modifications required, whether it's fueling, timing, boost, supercharger, limits and RPM maps in there, shifting points, so adjusting the torque reduction to enable the gearbox to shift quicker. All those wonderful things the technical team will do. Back down to our workshop, or if it's a mobile dealer or one of our dealer workshops, the file gets sent back through to them through our portal. They then upload that back onto the car. And a little bit of reverse in the process from earlier, they will then check the car again. So it's not just upload the file to it and that's it, done, here's your keys, thank you very much for visiting us. It's the file's uploaded, the vehicle is then tested again, it's then had further diagnostics carried out on it to ensure that everything is working as it should do, and then you get your keys back and you're allowed to go and take your car for a test drive.
Okay, and lastly, you're not the only company that does remaps. I've seen lots of people around doing them, so why should I come to you rather than go to somebody else?
Love a question like this. And the truth is, I find tuning is a little bit like Formula One, actually. The UK is a really hotbed of talent. We've got some great tuning companies in the UK. A lot of them are very specialist, and I have to be honest, they're very, very good at what they do, but maybe for a very small range of cars. There are also some terrible tuners out there, so do your research, a bit like Formula One teams. I would like to say that we have a very broad range of cars. In fact, it's absolutely huge, covering plant and commercial vehicles too, both power and fuel economy, as Simon has already mentioned. We're quite unique in what we do, that we do test and develop all of our maps in-house. And I've got to be honest, most tuning companies don't. So we've got the largest software team I know of anywhere. There's 9 people on our software team, and we have 2 full-time trainers too, as well as a dyno team down in the workshop. So everything is dyno tested, everything is developed in-house. That means everything is custom, so you don't get a tune that we've already developed that's sitting on the shelf. We're able to have a sensible conversation with you as a vehicle owner, understand what your vehicle is, understand what sort of level of tune you're looking for, and we can write software that is exactly right for you and your needs. And then we have all those wonderful guarantees and backups and insurance that we've already talked about. I think that makes us pretty unique, and I'd like to think we're very, very good at what we do, and certainly our customers seem to like it. Simon, I don't know if you want to give anything technically on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, to add on top of that, you've already mentioned the 2 full-time trainers. I mean, we're so confident and happy in what we do. We offer global training in file writing. So if you're a budding tuner and you're just starting out in the industry, you've sort of tinkered with your own car, maybe a standalone ECU on a track car that you've worked on, we will actually provide training courses teaching you the safe, smart methodology of how to tune an OEM ECU, whether it's for performance, economy, stage 2, stage 3 and beyond. We do that for customers worldwide. We do international training courses around the globe. We have online training courses, IMI certified training courses, SCORM compliant training courses. We are so confident in what we do, we actually show others how to do exactly what we do. So it's something that sort of backs up what we do physically in-house. We're happy to share that with the world.
And I think that is really, really unique. You know, nobody wants to break the magic circle and show how this is done, but we are quite happy to do that. And we're very relaxed if customers want to come in and see their car on the dyno. The technical team will write the file live with them, literally show them this is the changes we're making to your turbo boost pressure, this is the changes we're making to your spark advance. Work on the map literally with you. You can sit in the car with the tester while your car is on the dyno. And we try to give it much more of an experience rather than just a tuning exercise.
Yeah.
That's great, guys. I think it's been great to see your enthusiasm, really, and I think this has been an interesting session. Hopefully, it'll help sort of address the main questions that come up from people. So Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.